Hello and welcome to the GamerGuild Podcast, your weekly show where we round up all the week's video game stories and news for your listening or viewing pleasure, right here on YouTube and up there in digital clouds on your podcast platform of choice. So join me this week. We've got the full crew back in after I kind of bailed out last week, so apologies for that, guys. Chris, how you doing?
I'm good, Rob. Plenty of news to talk about, but barely any Xbox for some reason.
Yeah, I figured we'll just do a PlayStation episode this week.
It seems like it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, what's the point? There's nothing really happening in the old green side of space. And not just Chris, Richie, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. I have got a kind of Aussie lemonade monster energy, so that I may turn Australian halfway through the show. Just ignore it if it happens.
Or Ozzy Osbourne, one of the two.
If I suddenly flip upside down, because gravity works opposite for Australians.
That's not how it works, but okay.
Like, the science on that just made me like almost vomit. But okay, that's fine. This show is going to be, I think, about 90% Xbox, based on kind of what we've been talking about this week.
Xbox.
I think just everything about it. So we've got Xbox announcing basically their entire game plan for the next decade. Yeah. We've got Ubisoft announcing Division 3. And maybe Apple announcing that they're actually going to start getting serious about gaming. Who knows? Stranger things have happened. Okay?
That's Netflix.
Before we get into the show, what have we been playing this week? Is there any prizes for going away from Starfield this week?
Not for me. I think I've barely had time to game this week. I've been so busy with work, but I did get about 3 hours solid last night, which has put me, without spoiling it, I think I'm about level... I think the best thing is to say what level you are. It seems to be like the generic way of highlighting things. So I'm about level 22. And in terms of... I've just had, I'd say, the revelation. If that resonates with people, fantastic. If not, in terms of the main plot, but
no, I do not know what that means yet.
Okay,
so lowly level 17 over here.
But so. I haven't had much time to sink in it. But at the same time, like, I'm enjoying it, but I'm also just waiting for Spider-Man and potentially Assassin's Creed Mirage. Like, I'm enjoying the game, but it's starting. I think the more hours I'm putting into it, the more that the gameplay loop cycle. I feel like I spend a lot of time in menus. I feel a lot of time just going from A to B through the menu of my spaceship, and I'm not actually doing what. Like, some things happened in the main story last night, and I kid you not, I just did not give a shit because the characters and stuff, I just, for whatever reason, they've not really. The Constellation crew, have at it, guys. I don't know, but I don't know if Rob, your sentiments are the same.
I kind of feel myself walking around a lot and not actually doing... Like, I'm skipping through a lot of dialogue options where, like, I'm doing, like, the side quests. I'm like, okay, bang, 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 bang.
You get back to it.
Do a persuasion thing. Yeah, it's getting a bit repetitive for me as well. And I'm not sick of the world yet, but I am sick of the menus and not really seeing anything of my ship apart from the cockpit, because I just automatically go straight into the cockpit, because why would you go through the rest of the ship and stuff like that? So no, I get it. I
think Richie's different to us too, probably, by the sounds of it.
I actually agree with everything you're saying, but I'm still really enjoying it. I actually do a lot of times actually go through my cockpit. The one thing I have found, actually, because I'm right near the end of the story, I had a quick look at what New Game Plus is without going into spoilers for myself, but I think you lose pretty much everything. You lose all your guns, all your ships, all your outposts, and that was a bit, a bit of a kick in the teeth when, like, I spent a lot of time, like, building an outpost or building a ship, and then just go, oh yeah, when you get a New Game Plus, it's just going to get rid of it.
Yeah, I feel like it's like
I get
the promise
it.
of New Game Plus is...
There is very good story reasons for why that happens, which I'm not going to divulge into.
That's the revelation I was talking about, I think.
Yeah. There's very good story reasons for why it has to happen and make sense in context. But if you've spent, 20 hours, gathering up materials and building this awesome base, then you play through the story and you get into New Game Plus and go back to where your base was and it's gone. You'd be quite annoyed. So I've actually just abandoned all that stuff that I actually spent quite a lot of time on. Because I know it's just now redundant.
Yeah.
So that was a bit of a sour note, and otherwise, because I was really enjoying like building, like buying a ship and then customizing it to how I want it and stuff. To know that I'm going to lose my ship as soon as I complete the game.
How many hours in are you now?
I don't know, but my counter's ticked over 2 days.
Right. So yeah, I expected you to be the.
And that's overinflated because I do often leave it just on, but yeah, I'm like level 28, I think I am.
Right.
Okay. So do you see yourself continuing to play this, or is there any other games turning your eye?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I think it is a perfect time sink game. So like, as Chris, as you said, you're waiting for Spider-Man. I think this is the sort of game where you can just go, you know what, this is just going to take me over till Spider-Man. Then you play a Spider-Man, then you can always go back to it quite easily.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty much the same. I've dumped all my time into Starfield, but my head has been turned by Cyberpunk this week. So although I've got about 10 minutes actual in-game at the moment, just because of the download, I had to rebuy Cyberpunk and whatnot. I think that's going to be... I'm going to go on a little Starfield hiatus, to be honest, and go to another neon, futuristic, dystopian setting.
They're actually quite similar games when you think about it.
There's actually, funny you should mention that, Rob, when I've been playing like the setting, especially on Neon City, when you go there, and the missions, and because I'm playing it in first person predominantly now, there are a lot of things where I'm thinking, like getting in an elevator and walking around and interacting with people, and they look like cutscenes. It is very much just Cyberpunk, and I have had that need of like with Phantom Liberty on the horizon. I never finished Cyberpunk because it bugged out on me. There was that part of me which is like, would I rather be playing Cyberpunk right now? Or
I actually think Cyberpunk's a better game. I think there's a lot more to do in Starfield, but the traveling with all the menus and stuff, it just feels like you're pinging from fast travel point to fast travel point quite a lot.
Disconnected.
And the cycle of, okay, I'm going to have to jump to this planet, then the grav jump, then you have to go through the scanner, then you have to land, and then you get out of you. There's too many kind of load screens before you, like, from when you're going in your getting on your spaceship and getting off on another planet. You're going through about 3 or 4 load screens every single time.
Yeah, I think with the difference of like it's always going to be compared to any other sci-fi, but I think with the way No Man's Sky does it, and then the way we've seen Star Wars Outlaws promise it does it, like you literally get in your ship, you take off, you go through the clouds, you're in space, you have a space battle, and then you do the hyperspeed without, seemingly, again, Outlaws isn't out yet, but it looks like it's seamless, and it seems like a lot of menu navigation. I feel like every time I'm in a menu, it just breaks the immersion, and I'm supposed to be exploring the space world, but I'm not, and I think a lot of people have said that's why Skyrim and stuff is better, because you're not being pulled out of it all the time.
It's contained.
Constantly.
Because it's contained on one map. Your only load screens when you go in and out of like caves and stuff in Skyrim, where with Starfield, you land on the planet, I don't really care about exploring the planet. Any of them. Like...
No, that just means to an end, aren't they? Which
because I know like there's no realistic way I'm going to actually reasonably explore a planet. So it's just like drop in, go straight to the objective. I might explore a facility or like a point of interest or something, but I'm not. If I see a cave on the map, I'm not bothering going to it.
No, completely get that. So it seems like we're still enjoying it, but there's
I still love the game. It's weird because I still actually love the game.
Yeah, but we talked about this a few weeks ago. Well, there's too much stuff happening in gaming for us to dwell on stuff like that. And in the spirit of that, what I'm going to do is shut down this nice organic discussion about what we've been playing and whatever. And I'm going to go straight into the news. But first of all, if you haven't already liked, subscribed, shared, all those nice things, make sure you do that and click the actual real subscribe button in the notifications to keep in the loop of all our amazing content. Socials, we're on Discord, Twitter, X, whatever it's called now. Facebook, I think we're on, are we?
Yeah,
not sure.
Pretty much everything.
Yeah. Every kind of Thursday or Friday we do a weekly live stream, and this week we hopped into Lies of P, and it was quite entertaining to see Richie get kind of stomped by a big giant. What was it again?
It was like a puppet. It's like a puppet master thing with a giant skinny top hat.
Yeah, and a big giant cage. Yeah, so if you enjoy seeing Richie get marginally more frustrated before finally cresting the mountain of victory, go check out that live stream, and we've got plenty more to come in that vein.
It's a good game. Enjoyed it.
I liked observing it. The setting was really nice, and it seems like they've done a good job of creating like that mystery dystopian feel, which I kind of really buy into. So yeah, check it out on Game Pass if you are subscribed, because it's there, it's free, and yeah, it's a great game. Chris, would you like to introduce us to the news?
I will, by introducing you to the graciously gathered Gamer Guild Gazette, aka the news.
The news. As always, the news is brought to us by our guild members, who all support the channel that little bit extra. And again, every single week, we appreciate every single one of you, every single listener. So thank you for your continued support. If you would like to join that cohort of people who support us a bit more, subscriptions are available from 99 pence. It's very much appreciated. Not expected, but
I expect it.
I expect it, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I was going for the soft sell there, but subscribe, you losers, freeloaders.
It'll increase your life satisfaction rating.
It will.
By 0.07%.
That's very significant. For
that's too much encumbrance. That's too much encumbrance for me, that, Rob. 0.07%.
Oh, your CO2 is going to go way down.
Yeah, I can't breathe now.
I'll run. Okay. Jumping into the first story, the biggest story. I think probably the biggest story in Xbox for a lot of years in terms of industry impact, right?
I think this is the biggest leak in video game history. Like, realistically, of what it is. Like, I've never known. We get leaks quite frequently, and we get stuff in Reddit and everything, but never have I ever seen an entire company, themselves, by the way, leak the entire documentation of their next 10-year roadmap.
It is insane, right?
And in detail as well, not just like a little snippet. This is the official internal documents that Microsoft
This feels like an internal presentation that like Phil Spencer be given to the board at Microsoft of level of documentation.
So for anybody who's been living under a rock this past week, there must have been some requirements for Microsoft to submit some documentation to the FTC case, which is currently and forever ongoing. From what I can tell, it seems like someone has internally from Microsoft, bear in mind this is not kind of being leaked from another source, has either uploaded the wrong documentation to the correct portal of the FTC, or done the correct documentation to the wrong portal of the FTC, which has resulted in people being able to access basically the blueprint for the next decade of Microsoft, and a load of kind of juicy internal emails, which, from what I can tell, were never meant to see the light of day by some like the tones they're taking with competitors and partners and things like that. So
there is actually a date on this presentation on one of the first slides. A tiny little date at the bottom, which says 05/02/22. I'm assuming the American dating system, so that would be May 2022 that this was put together. So it's about a year out of date.
So included in this leak is new kind of Xbox Series X and S refreshes coming seemingly in the next 12 to 14 months. New controllers, plans for the next generation Xbox, which is kind of 2028. Like a raft of new game content from first-party studios, third-party studios. Discussions around Microsoft buying Nintendo, for Christ's sakes. Like, what the hell?
Then it was even kept secret.
Yeah, right. And then all these kind of different internal discussions around things like Starfield being delayed, and who can they lean on to bring kind of a third-party game into support. So again, it's not kind of hyperbole for Chris to be saying this is probably the biggest leak in, again, potentially gaming history. I can't think of a bigger example.
Bigger than the GeForce Now leak? Because GeForce Now leak was pretty big and actually like effectively announced a handful of games. but I fear this is more comprehensive.
I think, the GeForce Now League was just a list of titles, whereas this is titles, hardware, roadmap, finances, anything and everything.
Controller that wears trousers.
Yeah, and games.
Yeah.
So everything.
Exactly. Typically, Phil Spencer has came out and kind of tried to, I don't know, put a teacup of water onto the big bonfire that's happening by saying, "Oh, these are all outdated, guys. Like, this is not the plan. This was the plan, but we've got something super secret and better and whatever."
I mean, he is actually right. If you look in some of the dates and the game released area, you can tell it's outdated because it's got like Starfield as 2021.
Oh yeah,
so
it did. The details will have shifted, but in like for a company the size of Microsoft, like the big plans they move at a cruise ship kind of nimbleness as opposed to a speedboat, right? So let's jump into the first and arguably biggest one of these, and it's the Series X and Series S refreshes, which are penned to come for the end of 2024. Now, these are kind of like they're not calling them Pro models. Like, I think it goes a bit beyond the Pro kind of slim thing that Sony tried to do, and it's more of like a mid-season tweak, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think this is intended to be like a Xbox One X. This is just, I think these are intended to replace the current hardware, just like for like.
Yeah. So what we'll do, we'll jump onto the Series X, and I'll just like give you a couple of headlines of what looks to be changing. Again, this might be relatively outdated, it might not be, but from what we can see, there's minor updates to hardware, but nothing that's going to kind of make a big shift in terms of, I guess, pure performance from a gaming perspective. What there is some tweaks on the storage, some improvements to the Wi-Fi connectors just to give better stability. So I think it's going from a 6, like Wi-Fi 6 to a Wi-Fi 6E. Power reduction, sustainability with like kind of improvements. There's a big push on recycled packaging, which I'm guessing is a company-wide Microsoft mandate. More internal storage, because as we know, the bane of Xbox is internal storage. And perhaps the most interesting thing is the Xbox isn't a box anymore. It looks like an overgrown Sonos speaker.
It's like a cylinder, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's the game sphere.
Yeah, it's like, it is. It's like if you stack two Sonos speakers on top of each other, that's basically what this looks like.
Yeah.
Price is staying the same. So no difference in price, which is, I think, was it $499?
Yeah. $499, yeah.
$499. What's your initial thoughts, Chris?
So it's interesting because the key thing, which we've not mentioned because it's not really highlighted in the description, is they describe it as adorably digital, which we should point out, if this is going to replace the current X, there is no disk drive on this thing. So that would in turn mean the X and the S going forward at the end of this generation are diskless. So this is Microsoft essentially. I'm sure they'll obviously still sell the original model, but you'd imagine that SKU goes out the window once stock's depleted. They're leaning all into this digital future with Game Pass and the like, and it's kind of in a way it irks me as someone who is a big physical collector that they describe it as adorably all digital. Like, this is a big shift in the industry. Like, I know, like, that's where the trends are going. Yeah, obviously it's internal, so it might just be like a cutesy way of wrapping it up, but obviously from this slide we can't really get a sense of how small it is, so all I can imagine is they're using the word adorable because this thing's going to be tiny in comparison to the X currently. And it's almost like that, oh, look how small it is. You know, when you see like mini keyring versions of PlayStations and stuff, you go like, oh, it's like a little mini tiny one. That's all I can really gather because technology is very rarely adorable.
So here's the thing I'm trying to use as a scale point here. So you have I've used my current Series X, the logo on that. What I've done is I've tried to like transpose that to where it is on this new kind of designed Series X. So like, it looks kind of big to me, to be honest. I know it's called dinky, but
I'm expecting it to be roughly the same size, just more spherical. But I do think the taking away of the disk drive is probably something that they're probably hoping people didn't pick up on too much, especially considering they didn't intend for this to come out now.
Yeah.
I could see potentially Microsoft have actually got a good track record with this sort of stuff. I could see it being quite easily able to stick an external disk drive in via USB-C. And if you can do that, I don't think this is a problem.
But if it's like an extra $50, right?
Yeah.
Well, this is where it is, same great price, but we know they've raised their prices anyway, so by the time this comes out, with inflation and everything, the actual original X could be more expensive than this. So this $499 price might be less, if that makes sense, by the time we get to next October. Obviously, you are getting more storage to kind of balance out the lack of the slot potentially, but
I don't think storage and discs. I don't think when it comes to digital, like physical media, I don't think it's a storage issue nowadays because most of it is still downloaded. It's more of a game preservation thing, and and also the ability to use third-party storefronts. Because this is why, like Sony and Microsoft both want to push you into digital only, because they completely control their entire storefront, apart from the odd like CD keys and stuff selling codes. Yeah. But they have a lot more control than and there's like less money going to retailers like Amazon and GameStop, etc. And that price depreciates a lot quicker with physical, which is why I preferred for my PlayStation the disc version. But considering my Xbox was largely intended to be a Game Pass only box, that's why I wasn't bothered about the disc drive.
Yeah.
But if you are Xbox only, I think disc is the better way to go. And so, again, this could be mitigated by a third-party disc drive. Look a bit clunky, to be honest, but
adorably cute.
I don't know.
I mean, one thing that definitely won't have a disc drive as well is the Series S refresh. I love the best thing about getting leaked documents like this from a company is like the code names they attach to kind of these projects they do. So with the Series X, it was called Brooklyn, spelled with LIN at the end, which
it's cool. That's how the kids say it, Rob.
I feel like it's like a council estate version of calling the kid Brooklyn, right? With different spelling. But the Series S is codename Elwood, whatever.
Elwood, yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of follows the same narrative as the X. It's not so much an improvement in terms of performance. It's kind of refining what's already there. So you're getting much more storage, which I don't know about you guys, but for the Series S is absolutely needed. Like the biggest frustration I have with my Series S is that I have to keep installing, uninstalling, and kind of managing my storage like a Resident Evil inventory management system. So
encumbrance.
More storage. Yeah, it's exactly that.
Digital encumbrance.
So it's more storage. It's better Wi-Fi.
It's the same again, basically, isn't it? Just
it's
power.
Upgrading connectivity, improving sustainability, improving power consumption. But it's large. It's effectively the same console.
Yeah,
it's
at the same price again as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is it. It's not it is an improvement, but games aren't going to play better. It's improvement in all the little ways that you don't really think too much about.
Exactly.
Yeah, we should point out as well, the S has the terabyte version out now. They released the Black Edition last month. Yeah. So there is like a terabyte storage out, but not a refined one with all the specs kind of jazzed up.
Yeah.
Maybe this could have morphed into that, potentially.
Yeah, so again, it's interesting, but I do agree with you guys that the shift away into kind of fully digital and almost like it's almost like they're calling time on their physical media. Like
they're trying to. Yeah. That's what they want.
I think Game Pass is definitely helping that because as someone who's new to the Xbox ecosystem, I don't really care about physical because I've never had them before. So going out and buying like a disc on Xbox for me, it doesn't mean anything because everything I play is through Game Pass. So it is that I don't own them to download anyway. A lot of it I stream via cloud. So then I am that ideal candidate where I don't really care too much for physical. I am purely digital when it comes to Xbox. So if their ecosystem, their metrics are showing that, then again, that's just the way it's going. So sorry GameStop, you're all going bust in the next few years when you've got nothing to sell but Funko Pops.
But this does raise a bigger point, whereas if everything's going digital for Microsoft and they control the storefront, there's big like competition law problems and like antitrust things which will emerge off the back of that, which given Microsoft's track record in legal affairs at the moment, it kind of sucks, right?
It's entirely possible that eventually they might be forced to allow third-party app stores onto the Xbox.
I think they're going to have to, because again, it's highly illegal with their current kind of setup.
Yeah, if you have the option to buy discs from a third-party retailer, then it's not a closed ecosystem. But as soon as you fully close off that ecosystem, I mean, the way they can do it is they can just go, we provide keys, which you can buy, go to somewhere like CD Keys, you can buy a key, come in, install it there. So these workarounds that already exist, which they can point to.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine it's too crazy, especially if you think about mobile phones and their ecosystems. Like Apple have the total lockdown on their iOS game store, and just no one bats an eyelid at that, because and developers and stuff pay,
the EU hate it.
Extortionate
The EU
fees.
are really trying to legislate them out with that.
When you build it, it's that thing. But yeah, we're heading definitely to a digital world. But it's again this mid-generation refreshes. It's interesting because now we've seen these documents. Phil Spencer was quoted at Gamescom last month when he was asked directly about, will you copy Sony and do like a pro version, a mid-generation model, and his response was, no, our Series S and S is our model. So he was true. In fact, these documents have shown that he was true to his word in a way, because they are the same consoles, they're just refined.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So yeah, maybe there is a bit of a silver lining for Phil Spencer in this leak, in which he stays true to his word.
With Xbox and like Sony, there's less a discrete change through the generations, because it's always fully backwards compatible, where Sony's been a bit iffy with that in the past. Mm-hmm. So they probably don't need an Xbox Pro model, because they could, if Sony brings one out and they feel them falling behind, they can just pull forward the next generation. Yeah. And then just keep going, because eventually I do think, and a lot the stuff in the leaks actually show that Microsoft are pushing towards eventually a boxless future.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I don't think it's not going to be this generation, it's not going to be next generation, but they are clearly pushing that direction.
Yeah, which is definitely a branding issue for a company called, like a console called Xbox, when the box ceases to exist.
With one of the controller announcements, the universal controller that they've got planned, that feels like this is just going to be the Xbox controller. That will probably transition from generation to generation to generation to generation across all potential devices.
Agreed, yeah. So these two refreshes are originally slated to happen in the back end of 2024. Obviously, like, that could be completely kibosh now, or it could have never been a thing they were committed to. But it does look like they're going to treat the launches as two distinct entities. I think they want to get like 2 months of difference between them, so they can, I guess, have their own stories and have their own breathing space. So I guess just let's keep our eye on this for Christmas next year.
Yeah, it'll be weird now, because if it doesn't come, everyone will be like, what the hell, Microsoft? You promised us a launch. And they're like, no, we didn't. It was a leaked internal document. But the audience, the games industry, will be like, right, here it comes. There's got to be an Xbox showcase some point soon.
Yeah, it's like Harry the Intern. No, Harry the Intern said that. We didn't say that, okay?
Yeah. This leak will have pushed forward their plans to announce this stuff. Like, they're probably now going to have to announce this earlier than the thought they wanted to, just to get on top of the narrative. So I wouldn't be surprised if even later this year that we get a Game Awards. Game Awards could be an interesting point where you know what, we're just going to do our announcement there rather than maybe next summer or something, when they were probably expecting to. Yeah. Just going to get it out there. If whether it's 2024, 2025, we're just going to put a date on it, so people already know it's coming. Now we have told you officially and when, just to get back on top of the narrative.
I mean, the thing is, if they do want to bring forward this announcement, then that does potentially clash with another piece of leaked information, which was that a updated controller was set to launch in May 2024. So in the same way that they've got a refresh coming with the base consoles, they've got another interesting project name, this one called Project Sabile, which is essentially in the same guise as the consoles. They're looking at ways to improve their sustainability, improve their longevity of the console to a degree, and also give some kind of quality of life improvements to the standard Xbox controller at the moment. The biggest one for me in this list, which I'll quickly run through, is they've got a swappable rechargeable battery, which for anybody who has to go through the pain of actually buying a separate kind of charging pack for your Xbox controller seems a bit, I don't know, 2010-ish, to be honest.
There's an argument actually for the battery, for having, like, Sony have the built-in battery, and Microsoft have always went, just buy some batteries. the argument in favour of Microsoft, even though it's more of a pain in the arse, means it actually extends the life of the controller.
Oh yeah, I love the actual feature. I just don't think I should have
the
to
downside,
buy a separate pack for it.
The downside is you end up, a lot of people just probably buy batteries, one-use batteries, and end up chucking them all the time, which is what they're trying to probably avoid with the sustainability. I've actually just got third-party battery packs on mine, so I can put them on my charging stands.
Yeah.
But I think that seems like the best of both worlds, really.
Yeah, so new battery, like rechargeable battery packs seem like great news. They're also doing some kind of quality of life improvements on the actual console, like on the actual controller, perhaps just to bring it in line with, like, I guess, what we expect from a controller now. So haptic feedback, VCA haptics that double up as speakers, accelerometer, and more importantly, quieter buttons, and especially the clicky thumbsticks on an Xbox controller are painfully loud. These are all listed as kind of features which have been planned in for this controller update. I
think it's that, for me, with the buttons, it's that balance between having a nice clicky feel, but not a nice audible click. You want that balance, because you don't want mushy buttons, but you also, because you want a nice and precise click to it, but you don't want it to be too audible.
Yeah, I'd agree. And perhaps one of the biggest kind of things is that it'll also be available as part of Xbox Design Lab, so you get like the nice colours, you get the nice customization options, and kind of, all the good stuff that we've come to expect from those guys.
Yeah, we should say
is this
the
piquing your interest at all?
The look of it, the two-tone, like the slice down the middle, I've seen some jokes online about it looks like it's wearing a pair of underpants or something. It's a bit it's a bit of a choice. I'm not too keen on like the PlayStation two-tone colour either. My favourite control at the moment is my black DualSense control. Like, it's just the same through and through. I like the option to move and change things, so I just hope if it gives the option to maybe do like the white as yellow and then the bottom as yellow or whatever colour, that it's the same type, because sometimes when you change the plastic you get like an offset colour when it doesn't meld to different plastic types differently. So if the bottom's like rubberized and the top's plastic, even though you might pick the same colour, it might come out looking a bit weird still.
And there's no guarantee you can change the bottom part, so you might end up just stuck with black. So then you end up everyone just goes to Design Labs and just gets a black controller.
Yeah, I mean, Design Labs has always been fantastic, so I'd expect nothing less. The one point in terms of the actual controller itself that does stand out for me is the direct-to-cloud. So this is the first controller to have direct-to-cloud features, which is taking a leaf straight out of Google Stadia's book, RIP. That means if I'm playing cloud gaming, that latency is reduced because this controller has the option to speak directly to Microsoft servers, which means it's cutting out the typical Bluetooth latency that you would get connecting to your console or your PC, and then that message gets passed on to the servers. It's basically cutting out the middleman, so you're getting even better movement rotation. So that's probably the biggest feature change, I would say, along with all like the haptic stuff, which I think because of how good the DualSense is, they've had to match that. I don't think I don't think reading it looks like they're going to fully lean into the DualSense controller, but maybe we'll see a revised version of the Elite comes out with that kind of input. But haptics, accelerometer, always great. But yeah, the direct to cloud for me personally is the biggest difference with this one.
Yeah, it is.
See, because of my perpetually connected controller to a USB wire, I actually kind of forget that the controller can actually be wireless as well. That's just like how I play my Xbox, which seems again insane when I say it out loud. But again, these are all kind of, we kind of forget how old the Series X and the Series S are now in terms of like a life cycle, because obviously COVID kind of was a bit of a time warp when they kind of dropped and stuff like that. So do you think the timing's correct for this, or would you have preferred to see kind of a bit more time for kind of them to mature into a bit more, maybe like
I think
delay back a year or two and they could have done a bit more hardware improvements on it?
I think if it's that when the hardware's good to go, I don't see any point in delaying it, because it as we've said, with the consoles and the controller, it's largely small improvements rather than he's a completely new SKU, at least for the stuff we've talked about so far. So when it's ready to go, just do, and their stock and their production and all that kind of stuff is ready to go, just make the switch, because the new consoles are better than the current ones. The new controller should be better than the current one. Yeah. So if it's just a like for like, I don't think there's any point in delaying it.
Yeah, I think it's about the perfect time for one, and as Phil alluded to, that it's the same console. I don't currently play on my PS5, on my Series S, on my PC, or cloud, and think it's really been pushed to its limits yet. Like, if the PS5 isn't, like, when I'm playing a game, like, load times are fantastic, the games look gorgeous, like, I don't feel like the devs have even got anywhere near tapping into the full power of these consoles yet. So why revise it? Why give them a different work stack to deal with when developing, like, a whole different thing to work towards? When we know they were getting quite overwhelmed previously with all, like, the cloud versions of things, the port versions, bringing things back to the Switch. We've got a Mortal Kombat story later on that's going to tell you about the varied quality difference. And you know what? Rather than rocking the boat too much, if the X and S are selling well for Microsoft, if the PS5 is selling well, just keep the ship on a steady course, and then just do a revision. That's, let's face it, just for consumers. If you haven't got one yet, there's a marketing ploy. Like, again, with marketing and tech, you want that new thing to talk about. Phones do it every year. You get like 3 new iPhones. Do we really need 3 new ones every single year? Not at all. They could probably hold off a year or two, but they need that marketing cycle to keep ticking over. So a 4-year boost is pretty much standard. It's mid-generation, right? It's what I'd expect to see.
Yeah. This could be an interesting time, actually, if it's in like end of next year. That'll probably, for me and you, Chris, be coming to the end of our Xbox All Access deal. Depending what the money's looking like next year, I might consider actually just going for another Xbox All Access deal, because by that point you're just used to paying that money, and then getting a refreshed X, and that could be how I upgrade from one console. Because I do think sometimes if you go from playing a game on PS5 then go into your Series S, you can see a noticeable difference in quality. It doesn't affect how much I enjoy my experience playing games, but potentially in like a year or two's time, I could consider going for an upgrade into an X.
I'm with you on that, and the same thing. Like, I'll want Game Pass anyway. So if the new All Access plan comes with another 2 years of Game Pass, it's like, well, for a few quid more, I could just get an X. Then why not?
So then it becomes a phone contract, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah. And then I'm just in the ecosystem in perpetuity, and that's what I think one of the next slides says. It's reaching gamers and keeping that all digital ecosystem ticking over. So they know what they're doing, and I guess we're the right type of people for that.
God, imagine getting like 10 phone calls in like the 3-month period from Microsoft saying, it's time to upgrade, it's time to upgrade, your deal's coming to an end.
Pop into store. Wait, we don't have any because we shut them down by going all digital.
There'd be like a sub-only deal for Okay, so we talked a lot about what's happening on the existing generation of consoles, and again, arguably, like it's not even the biggest story of this leak. I'd say that the biggest kind of, I guess, morsel of information on what the future of Microsoft holds relates to their next generation of Xbox console. So, again, some details dropped on this in the big leak. Before we get into the details and the nitty-gritty, I would just like to ask you both, let's start with Richie. What is an immersive game and app platform, Richie?
I mean, if you want to go the biggest immersion you can get in gaming it's got to be VR, but I think they're talking about anything you can that switches you off from whatever is around you. So it's everything probably from how the controller feels to the visual fidelity of the games to how the audio sounds. Like things like wearing a headset can actually just be more immersive than watching it through a TV, because you're getting the audio straight into your ears and it cuts out other sounds. So that's where I think they're getting at.
What do you think, Chris? What comes to your head when you hear immersive game and app platform?
I think it's a marketing term for we want everyone to play everything here in one place. Is about the gist of it. So
this gives me Xbox One vibes, to be honest. Where they're trying to make that multimedia platform. But yeah, immersive game and app platform is what Microsoft's marketing team have cooked up for their next generation Xbox. They're kind of, again, going hard into the cloud infrastructure and going hard into this kind of boxless, diskless version of gaming in the future. So from what we can see, their intention to launch the next Xbox comes in 2028, and the crux of it, I think, is this term they're using, which is supporting cloud hybrid games. Now, that to me talks about even reducing the need for a console whatsoever, and almost having your controller as the main portion of hardware, in the same way that Google Stadia has kind of tried to do in the past.
Yeah. So looking at they've got a slide in here, the path to leadership in gaming, and it shows kind of their predicted market split. This is mainly built around Xbox Game Pass subscribers. The predicted market split over the years between console, PC, and cloud. Should say that the console figures are juiced by Game Pass Ultimate being in with the console. So the PC one is just PC Game Pass and the cloud. And you can see how much the cloud should grow. It's around about 2027 they expect cloud to overtake PC gaming. Because, well, cloud is also includes low-end PC gaming. The Universal Wireless Controller seems like it's planned to be launched late 2025, just before the mid-generation refresh. And then with like Gen 10 coming in like 2028, mid-2028. So it looks like, yeah, I think Gen 10 might be the last box.
Which would be big. Now,
it would be big.
I think it'd be quite small. Adorably small.
Ugh. So, like, Microsoft this isn't like a new ambition they've had over like the past, like that's just kind of surfaced. If you guys cast your memories back to Crackdown 3, there was at one point an intention for a lot of that processing power for that game to be kind of, for lack of a better word, offshored onto kind of remote hardware and things like that. And it didn't really come about for lots of reasons. Infrastructure of, people's internet connections being primary one, to be honest. So cast your eyes ahead to 2028. Do we think the actual... Let's talk specifically the UK, just because we're based in the UK. Do you think the UK kind of connectivity standards will be ready for a kind of heavily based cloud system by that point, to enable kind of people to play these games and enjoy them properly?
See, I read it as I don't think it'll be the full game runs off that. I think the majority will download. I think it's for the expansion of the game. So if you want more people, if you want more physics going on and stuff, that will be supported by cloud. But it would still run fundamentally as like a traditional game. It would just have the cloud backing up for here's 1,000 more enemies on the map, because it can off-source that power, as you said, Rob, to an external location, aka Microsoft Cloud servers. That was kind of the dream with Google Stadia and Amazon Luna and stuff, is that they said games that were not possible on current hardware because of the scale of the servers, and we never really saw it outside. I think they tried it with Serious Sam at one point with enemies on screen, and then that game got a port anyway, so evidently it was possible.
We always talked about taking something like a World of Warcraft style experience, but instead of having that broken down into loads of servers, just everyone's in together by combining your hardware with the power of the cloud, that they can just have this truly massive game where everyone's playing at the same time.
But do we think they can pull it off? Do we think the actual environment's going to be right for it?
I think the UK infrastructure, apart from some rural areas, is largely there. I think the packages from some ISPs are good enough to handle this kind of concept. We know cloud gaming works if you have a decent infrastructure. The stuff I think needs to happen, I think they need to improve the quality of the hardware, the quality of the routers they send you out the gate, little stuff like that. But everything that needs to be there already exists. We have new entries into offering a fibre optic internet coming in the UK. The UK is probably a bit easier to get this over the line than somewhere like the US, which is huge and is broken down into 50 odd. It's 50 states, which almost act in some ways as different countries. So it's a lot more complex, a lot more moving parts in the US.
Yeah, small little island compared to a continent is definitely a lot different. But I think, again, like Richie said, I think it's there. It's just, this is, again, like a 10-year roadmap, so it's hard to say where we're at now, because these businesses are future planning for decades ahead. And I think it's fine, but I think it's still a lot of the core stuff will just be done on the console. But it's interesting in the leak, thankfully for Microsoft, their next-gen console is probably the least leaked piece of information we know. This slide deck, thankfully, didn't end on, oh, and by the way, he's the next console. It was actually quite light on its front.
They don't have the plans for it. There's a slide later that shows like how things are being funded, and literally it just says Gen 10 investigations.
Yeah.
So they're just early days trying to figure out what this console might even be. So there's nothing to leak.
Yeah.
Basically,
at least we know what games we'll be playing on it.
Yeah, exactly. Because again, alongside a bunch of like information that's dropped, we kind of got a roadmap for games until financial year ending 24. So that would be like the first half of 2025 in calendar years. That's kind of like how those line up. It's a bit out of date now because obviously like lots of games have shifted in the past year from when this has happened. But there's a couple of bits of new information there. So again, the Oblivion remaster has been heavily rumoured at this point. It's more or less confirmed, I believe. There's a Starfield DLC planned for end of
last year.
It was planned for end of
this list is clearly a pre-COVID list.
Yeah, but there's a couple of new bits of information. So I think the biggest one for me is Doom Year Zero, which again don't know what it means, but it's another Doom game, and those things have been on fire recently. That makes me very happy. Something mysterious called Project Kestrel, Project Platinum. Again, don't know what these things are.
Just Project Hibiki. Some of this stuff, like Project Hibiki, which was like designated for financial year end of 2021, may have already came out. We may have already played it.
Yeah, actually, it's a good point to note. One thing we definitely haven't played is a Ghostwire Tokyo sequel, which, Chris, I know you're a big fan of that game. Like a Bethesda title. It seems like that kind of sequel's been confirmed, which I guess isn't a surprise, but
the biggest surprise for me is that Deathloop doesn't have a sequel in there, because that was the first game that came out before Ghostwire Tokyo, and it was the better received. It got like Game of the Year nominations, and to not see that in there was quite a surprise.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's quite. I mean, to be fair, one of the project names could be that,
right.
Kestrel or Platinum or whatever. It's probably better that Microsoft kept these things under project terms. So
I know how lucky must they feel now? It's like, oh, thank God we didn't just do a find and replace like Kestrel for whatever.
I think I can tell you probably why Deathloop's not on here. It's because Dishonored is. They're both from Arcane Leon.
Right.
Again, Dishonored 3 gets a mention.
So Deathloop might be after Dishonored 3.
That's a good point. But in terms of it, I think the project names are very fortuitous. If this was Nintendo, the project name would be just the name of the game. Project Triangle would be that. Project Octopath.
That's a Square Enix thing more than Nintendo.
That's true, yeah. But in terms of the games, I guess, Doom's probably the biggest one. I think Doom Eternal was received very, very well. No surprise that we're getting back to that one. Year Zero, do we think that means it's like a prequel?
It seems that way, doesn't it? Maybe going back to like Doomslayer Origins or something.
Yeah,
we might see his face.
Maybe.
No, don't be stupid. I think it'd be interesting, actually, because like Law of Doom, like basically they found a portal to Hell on Mars, it opened up, and then basically hell broke loose. That's the basics of Doom. It'd be interesting if the game was set like on the run up to that finding.
Yeah.
So as like a full prequel, like.
But I think one thing we can take from this leaked game list is that Microsoft suck at keeping to their kind of internal like roadmaps for game releases, right?
I mean, COVID hit. COVID really probably knocked the hell out of all this.
But then Sony got all their games out on time. Like, that's the one.
Do we know that for certain?
Yeah, because they give us the dates and they came out on time.
Yeah.
So, like, we played, if you think, 2020, everything kicked off. We still got Horizon was on time. That came fine. I can't think of any other titles now off the top of my head that I've played on Sony PlayStation. Was it Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima were after? Or they were, like, pre? 2019? They were 2019, right? Either way, I think, in terms of the game list, internally, we should have had Indiana Jones by now, Oblivion Remaster, and Starfield. But then in the next bit, I think, of the news, like Phil actually like laments during internal documents and emails how like they had a gap to fill because these games were not out.
Yeah, I think at one point one of the emails was talking about, it was almost seemed like as panicked as the email can sound, where it's like, oh god, like Starfield's not going to drop now. Who can we pull into to get it to get some kind of, I guess, content out?
He mentions a 16-month gap, and like they're trying to push Game Pass. Game Pass has been well received, and then now suddenly a 16-month content gap, which we've been through, we experienced it.
Mm-hmm.
Redfall was kind of the end of that gap, and then that didn't work.
What a bad end, yeah. He laments Redfall as well, doesn't he? It's actually something quite sobering about like seeing internal communications of like how they are just normal human beings going like, oh guys, what are we doing here? What's happening? Like I have concerns around this, and for all their kind of sins, I guess it's in quite, not I don't want to say endearing, but seeing how they behind the scenes they are genuinely just trying to do a good job, like as you'd expect them to be in positions of power in a creative industry. But the way like Phil and his leadership team talk amongst each other, it is a case of like, look, we're aware of this, we're trying to address this, and it echoes a lot of stuff that he does say public facing. I think this goes back to Phil Spencer's character, that what he says behind the scenes is very much what's reflected in public. And him addressing, we've got a bad few months ahead of us, we need to do something about it, is them at least being proactive. So they're very conscious that... I feel like, sometimes we say Sony a bit brazen with their approach and say like, because they're number one, they don't need to give us a showcase, they don't need to tell us about what's coming next, because they're number one, they don't really care that much. Yeah. But seeing Microsoft in third place actively like address the problems and willing to spend money to do so, and seeing a 60-month gap is, it's troublesome, but it's interesting to think that they just sit there and go, right, how much does stuff cost? Who can we get? And there's a full list out there of like costings of, if we want to get Red Dead Redemption, this is how much it will cost per month to get it on Game Pass. If we want this title, we need to go to Square Enix and get that. And it's just like, God, there's a lot. Remember when Google Stadia got criticism for paying Capcom, was it 100 million for 2 Resident Evil titles? That seems like a steal at this moment in time, because that was to get them permanently ported to the platform. This is just for like 5-month gaps.
I think the difference there, though, is what happened. I mean, I was critical of people criticising Google for that, because people pay money to get things on the platform. It's just what Google needed to do. With this is the money to get these games on Game Pass rather than on the platform, because these are games that are largely going to be on the platform anyway. But how do we get it on Game Pass? How much does it cost to get Red Dead 2 on Game Pass? Obviously, Rockstar know how well Red Dead 1 was received. Look at the success of Grand Theft Auto 5 and going, we need a lot of money from you to even consider this.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, this list gives you an idea of how much it costs to get titles. Like the scale of these deals is massive. I think the headline one for me is, if they wanted Star Wars Jedi Survivor on Game Pass, it was 300 million.
Because Fallen Order did incredibly well. Everyone's hyped for the sequel, so EA are just going to look at it and go, well, we need to get more money from you than our actual projections for just selling the game. That's
like a lot of subscriptions they need to sell to kind of turn that balance, right?
It's quite interesting. Games where probably not, like the publisher's probably not as assured about its success, it might be cheaper, because then they get a guaranteed sum of money. But if they know, like, this game, everyone's looking forward to it, there's a lot of hype behind it, we know we've got a good product here, it's like, well, you're gonna have to pay us a lot, because we're expecting to make a lot of money on this.
100%.
Where if you're unsure and go, well, I'll take the bag of money, because then it secures the future of the studio.
Exactly that, yeah. I completely agree. Now, the last thing I'm going to touch on in this leak is, I know this has turned into a Microsoft leak episode as opposed to anything else episode.
It's a lot of news.
It's a hell of a lot of news. But the last thing to touch on before we move on to and do a lightning round of other news for the week is the absurdity of Xbox discussing buying Nintendo. I'm just going to let that sink in for a couple of seconds, just to let that sit in people's heads, because it's an insane sentence when you put it out like that. And like even Phil Spencer in his emails, which have leaked, is kind of reflecting that. Like he describes Nintendo as the prime asset, and the is all in caps, so you know he means business when he says that. Talks about Microsoft acquiring Nintendo, and like they self-labeled themselves as the best kind of Western kind of player in the market to be able to do that, which
I would agree.
I guess, yeah, but like it's such a low bar for everybody else,
Sony, Nintendo, and Xbox. They're the three main players in the gaming industry. It's only Nintendo and Xbox. Two of them are Japanese, so Xbox is actually the only big player.
Yeah, I'd rather that than like Tencent coming in and acquire Nintendo or something.
Eastern anyway, the Chinese.
That's what I'm saying. I'd rather a Western company as good as Microsoft do. But I love the fact that the email header is just random thought. It's not even like it's just like, oh, I've had a great idea, Phil. But then saying that, like they talk in the email about like acquisitions, which again we know in previous leaks and shows that we've done is Microsoft actively internally say about who could we acquire for this much. We've gone through the list before, haven't we? With like Square Enix or Ubisoft available for like crazy prices. But then in this one, Nintendo, they talk about actually looking at Warner Brothers as well, which would have been like that whole thing. And Phil actually addresses saying that Warner Brothers' biggest problem is they don't own their IP, which we've said before. Like Batman belongs to DC, and a lot of the Lego stuff doesn't belong to them, and Lord of the Rings doesn't belong to them. So it's an interesting one. But in terms of Nintendo, they've just spent like $78 billion on Activision. If they turn around tomorrow and we got a news story saying, oh, Microsoft to acquire Nintendo for $78 billion, the same price as Activision, that still seemed very expensive to acquire Nintendo.
I think it's basically impossible. You saw how difficult it is the Activision Blizzard King deal going through, and Activision Blizzard King doesn't have such strong ties in a cultural way to an entire country. Nintendo does. Japan
the key
would
point.
not be happy about this sale at all.
So actually, Nintendo is, I can't remember what it's called, but they, like the Japanese government kind of protects certain what they call heritage companies. And they get like they would get special loans from the Japanese government and things of this nature.
Because they're so important to the economy and the culture of the place.
I think it's more the culture than the economy, to be honest. Yeah. For Japan, I know people have this like very romanticized version of Japan, but there is a lot of, I guess, very chilled out racism there, for lack of a better word, and this would not go down well like a Western company buying a
It's nationalism. It's not
nationalism,
racism. It's more nationalism. They've got a very strong sense of national identity.
Yeah, so I can never see this happening in a million years, no matter how much money they threw at it. But
I guess it depends on the future. Like Phil says in the email, he said it's the prime asset, but he says in there Nintendo it'll take them a while to understand that their future is in software rather than hardware, and I think that goes a testament back to like their hardware's always been low key performance, and they've done really well off the Switch. But in 10 years' time, if Microsoft are playing the long game, like we remember after the Wii U, people were talking about Nintendo going bankrupt and stuff, even though they had a lot of cash assets. If they find themselves in another situation like that in 10 years, 20 years, Microsoft will probably still be cash rich as fuck to just come in and go, we can help you guys out, we'll take on Mario and such. And do it. So, like Phil says, he literally ends his email with a long time. Like, he knows it's a long time. Phil might be happily retired by the time this happens, but it's a possibility that they could look at.
Yeah, the crazy thing is, they were talking about it during the Switch boom of COVID, where I think it was it Animal Crossing that came out?
Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah, but the email, as Chris mentioned, the subject is random thoughts. So someone's had a thought since Phil. Have we considered this? I've just been thinking about it. I thought I'd just put it out there. I think with Nintendo, if the Switch was a flop, this is we're talking about this in a very different light.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
because the Switch was so phenomenally successful, Nintendo are now back at the peak again.
And it might not even be like buying them out. It might just be a partnership with them. Like, look at Sega. Like, they were in the same position Nintendo, and they fucked up. And then now we get Sonic on everything.
Yeah. As a Nintendo fan, I would love them to be a software-only company.
So you could play it.
Because that's, I think...
That's what they're good, right?
Because whether it's on Xbox or Sony or on both, I think you could get the best out of what Nintendo's good at, and that is their IP. Not necessarily the hardware you're playing on. They have interesting concepts for hardware, and they could even have a hardware division making third-party stuff for the other platforms, but I think their strength is in their software.
No, I'd agree. The last tiny bit of Xbox news before we mercifully jump on to some other things. The CMA have done a U-turn and now are just fine with the ABK deal. So, hooray, this could have all been done last year, but hey, we're all good now.
We knew this was
no more needs to be said about this. Okay.
Yeah.
Jumping on to other stuff, because I'm very, very conscious of the time we've sunk into the big leak.
Literally an hour.
Who is, out of Richie, Chris, who would you say is the biggest Division fan out of you two? Because I've put 0 hours into the Division.
Me.
Definitely Chris.
Definitely me. I've got the platinum for the first 2, so me.
How
I played
hyped
it a
are
handful
you?
of times on stream.
How hyped are you about Division 3? Because it seems like Ubisoft. I don't know.
And?
Yeah, right? Like,
Well,
like
Ubisoft just doing Ubisoft things. This is the problem. So yeah, they announced the Division 3 in a tweet, which led to a very dull, boring blog post, basically more addressing the creative director. So Julian Garrity, who kind of oversaw the Division 1 and 2, and then now he's moved on to Star Wars Outlaws, which again looks fantastic as part of Massive Entertainment. They've kind of announced he's excited to return to the Division, and he's going to take stewardship over the branding of the Division and be the creative director for the next game, the Division 3. But Ubisoft being Ubisoft, like, we have Heartlands, which should have been out this summer. It's still in like beta testing. Like, that's some kind of like free to play, middle of the road Division game. We don't know what that looks like. Division 2 received incredibly well, but then they tailed off near the end and started to do repeat season content, so they didn't have like a long term roadmap.
Yeah.
And
they had Division 2 had a roadmap, and then they got to the end of it and were surprised by how many people were still playing it, so they extended the life.
Yeah, but that was almost like too little too late, and we lived in a world where it was all well received. I'd argue Division 2 probably got the closest to Destiny that any other live service game has really had in recent years, like in terms of a genuine effort attempt to get to a live service shooter in the bag. And it was a really good game. I love it, and that's why I'm really excited for Star Wars Outlaws to see what that is, because it's kind of the promise of the Division in space to a degree. In terms of this announcement, it's just kind of, what are Ubisoft doing? Why would you announce a Division 3 and not put it at a showcase? Why would it not be part of?
Insane.
It does. Do you know your camera's off, yeah, Rob?
I did not know that.
All right, I was going to say, like, it disappeared, but I thought we'll keep talking because your camera's
as long
there.
as it's fine on your end, it's fine.
Yeah. Rob's just a little camera icon at the moment.
It actually isn't, but continue talking about Division 3.
I shall. But in terms of that, then, yeah, the Division 3, I'm excited for it. It unfortunately does seem like it's a long way out, though, because if this guy's still executive producer on Outlaws, that game isn't out until potentially next year, and then they're going to begin. It says in the post they're starting to build their team. That worries me, because the Division 2 should have finished, and they should have realistically probably started working on 3 almost immediately.
Yeah, this tweet probably shouldn't have mentioned the Division 3, because it's clearly they're not ready to announce it. But they wanted to address his move. So just saying he's going to rejoin the Division team and just leave it there. They didn't need to put that number 3 on.
Yeah, it's very.
So I think
surreal.
that was probably. I think it was just probably a bit sloppiness, to be honest.
Yeah, but again, it should have just been at a forward. Like, this could have been, the Ubisoft forward that was like okay, but they had a lot of filler with devs that was pointless.
Yeah.
If it ended with like just a tease of the Division 3's title screen, that would have got some hype. But now my worry is that the Ubisoft takes so long to get stuff out now. Like, am I going to be playing this and like by the time my Xbox's 10-year roadmap is finished, they're finally going to end it with, and the Division 3 is out now on the new 2028 console. But
I think you're looking probably about a good 3 years after Star Wars Outlaws comes out. Because that's when he'll probably, once that game's out the door, that's when he'll probably make the majority. There might be some like transitional stuff going on as he's starting to build the team and overseeing both projects.
Yeah.
But once Outlaws is done, that's when he'll make the full shift, and that's when Division 3 will really start its development cycle. So you're probably looking about 2 or 3 years minimum from that point.
crazy.
Richie, do you know how you talk about Ubisoft being really good at making like 7 to 8 out of 10 games? This feels like the 7 to 8 out of 10 way to do an announcement. Like, it just...
Yeah. I don't think they intended to do an announcement. That's kind of my reading.
Is it just like, yeah?
I think who, you know, when you tell, like, you've said something to the PR guy, okay, here's the story. The PR guy's, I've got anything for us. We haven't put anything out. Oh yeah, we've got this guy's agreed to move over to the Division team. He's going to head up the Division 3, and you've said it in confidence. And then the PR guy's just put word for word what you said out. It's like,
no,
you were meant to filter that.
Yeah,
you were meant to filter that content and get me to check it, and then go, no, you do not say the Division 3. I told you that to give you the context for you writing it.
That's a very good description of what probably happened. But,
yeah,
I mean, it's great to know that it's official. It's thrown a bone to the Division fans, and again, Heartlands could tie us over perfectly fine. Like, if Heartlands comes out and it's good and it's free to play, like, it could garner that audience over and maybe some newcomers. But it's just a shame that it's going to take so long, because it should have been hot on the heels. Like, I remember playing the Division 2, but it feels like an eternity ago now. I think we were playing it in 2019 with Stadia. That's how long ago it was. So
yeah, and it was quite old by then anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah, cool.
What's not old though, Rob?
Oh, I don't know what that transition you.
Anything.
Let's talk about. I made some promises at the start of the show to talk about 3 specific things, so I'm getting those out the door. So let's talk Apple and their, I guess, checkered past into kind of gaming. So anybody who's followed a company, which is hard to do, like hard not to do, knows that they've had like they've dipped their toes in the water in gaming a few times and then kind of pulled back, and in the same way that they kind of stumbled with Apple TV for a long, long time, and now that's starting to become at least a somewhat viable kind of product in terms of streaming and things like that. They've also there's been some hints at them coming into the gaming in a much bigger way with their kind of, again, I'm not a phone guy, so this has been called the cutting edge A17 Pro Silicon chip, which for anybody who's not interested in the tech side of things, essentially gives their hardware the ability to run kind of AAA titles in a way which perhaps we're not used to from mobile devices. So I know
Apple they have been nailing it with their silicon recently. Like the M1 Macs are actually really good. For processing power, it's yet to be seen realistically how well they do for graphics. And quite often with Apple stuff, they're kind of sharing RAM, so you don't have dedicated video RAM, dedicated just RAM. So there's stuff that they need to work on, but they seem like their hardware is getting better.
Yeah, and we know Apple have wanted to get in the game for quite some time. I think Apple Arcade, their kind of gaming subscription model on mobile, had its 4th year anniversary this past week, and they've always leaned into it. There's always been a lot of rumours saying Apple could buy Sony, Apple could buy, like, they need to do something to get into it. Cloud gaming was always a thing we spoke about on the channel of, like, when are they going to kick off their version of cloud gaming, because without the history in hardware, cloud gaming seemingly with Apple servers would be like a good move for them. It would be a natural transition, and then Google fucked it up. Luna are doing nothing, and then it's like maybe they should hold off and play the long game with this one. We know they've got a VR headset coming next year, which is going to cost like $3,500 for an Apple VR headset, which is astronomical prices, especially with like PlayStation VR 2 seemingly not doing much at all. So they're leaning into their phones now finally. So yeah, the 15 Pro is with all this cutting-edge GPU processing power. They showcased at their keynote speech with the new iPhone 15 announcements last week Resident Evil 4, Village, Assassin's Creed Mirage, and Death Stranding running on the phones. Which, well, I mean, they didn't show Mirage because it's not out yet, but like this is the latest AAA games running. Your phone will get shit hot, no doubt, and it's not going to be comfortable to play. The touchscreen input's going to be bad, but with a controller,
Apple Silicon actually runs quite cool though.
In a phone though, you're talking like very like sealed IP water resistant devices. So there's not much
my phone
breathability.
runs hot when it's using maps, right? That's
My phone tells me the camera's too hot if I take photos abroad on a sunny country sometimes. So
yeah, but we're all using Android. With Apple, they're basically the market leaders in like efficiency of their processors.
True.
So they're already ahead. So I can see it being better.
Yeah, absolutely. They talk about the variable refresh rate, 120 hertz on the screen, HDR, all that stuff is there. Like they make some fantastic tech. It's crazy to think that they're going to have like RE4 something or the latest Assassin's Creed running on a mobile device, and I guess this is where it's reaching out to casual gamers who are used to playing mobile games and getting them in the door with, hey, you can play Resident Evil on your phone, you can play Death Stranding on your phone, and previously that was like just unheard of. So they're leaning in heavily. They spent a bit of dedicated time at the keynote speech talking about it, and I guess like Microsoft's 10-year plan, Apple clearly have a 10-year plan to do with gaming. They just don't seemingly want to tell people what it looks like just yet. They haven't refined it down to what does Apple and gaming mean outside of mobile, because they've got the money, they've got the cash to do whatever the hell they wanted.
This seems like it's not outside of mobile. It seems like it's bringing AAA console level gaming to mobile, which is actually a smart move because they already have a huge install base. And a lot younger people are just more familiar with playing games on the phone with touchscreen inputs. Like, look at the success of things like Call of Duty Mobile and things like that. Stuff we, like, as old people now, touchscreen controls, unless it's designed to be a touchscreen game, I think are absolutely garbage.
Impossibly hard
the kid, but a 13-year-old at school playing on his break, he's just used to it.
Yeah.
And then you have third-party solutions like the Razer Kishi and stuff, which can give you the controller experience. So I don't think if they're going, you know what, we're not going to bother with a console or PC gaming. Our focus is going to be bringing AAA games to mobile. I think there's a lot of money in there.
I mean, they have like the Apple, like it's again winning space on like consumer screens, isn't it? And Apple have their own like Apple TV they launched to combat like the likes of Netflix and Disney. So you've got that consumer market share in your mind, and gaming is just another vertical of that. If you can cast these Resident Evil, Death Stranding games to your Apple TV, then that's the same thing, isn't it? It's just taking up that time.
Maybe Apple are the ones to actually finally crack hybrid gaming. So that hybrid that we've already talked about this episode, between using your hardware and then boosting it with cloud support. Apple might be the guys to nail that.
I mean, they can definitely nail it better than Nintendo can nail their
I'm talking
hardware.
really positive about Apple. That's rare for me.
Get out, Richard.
Yeah, I feel like this may be like the last kind of year or two we can kind of mock Apple users for trying to game on their devices, which, you know, has always been a nice point of joy for me for the past 10 years, being a PC gamer. What we could do, I feel like, unless Nintendo get their shit together and get the Switch 2 out, is we can just hop straight into mocking graphical performance on the Switch, because I really like, against the magnitude of what's dropped from the Xbox side of things, like Nintendo is also getting a bit of flack, but it's for entirely light reasons, and it's Mortal Kombat 1 on the Switch. $70, same as it is on other platforms, and the screenshots and graphical performance I'm seeing is like, it's like Sims 2, like levels of, I can't do it justice in words. It's like if you took the character models from the remastered Grand Theft Auto or San Andreas and then did the blur tool and the flattening tool in Photoshop and then put them into a game. They're just bad for $70. Super bad.
Yeah.
Switch 2 needs to have a Apple A17 Pro chip inside it by the sounds of it.
The thing is, we've known for a long time the Switch was underpowered when it came out. Nintendo are just the masters at optimizing their games for it. WB not going to put that same... Is it WB who owns Mortal Kombat?
Yeah, it's them.
Yeah, NetherRealm Games. Yeah. They're not going to put the same sort of effort in. And, yeah.
Yeah, like it
it's
looks
bad. This is
bad.
showcasing the weakness of the Switch. And the price does feel bad. And to be honest, if... In some ways, I kind of think of, if you want the best experience of this sort of game, shouldn't be playing it on a Switch.
I'd agree.
But it's that price point. The fact that they've went for the same price point. If this was cheaper, then you can go, you know what, it's a budget version of the game. It looks crappy, but as long as it plays well, that's what it is. But it's because it's the same price. It's like, this is why we need a Switch 2.
Yeah, it's very bad. Like I don't want to direct all the venom towards the devs on this one, because it's a multifaceted.
They've done what they can.
Yeah, it's multifaceted. Like the hardware they're using isn't up to scratch. It
was all mobile hardware. That's what they're using. Right?
Isn't it interesting that they didn't do a release on a PS4 and Xbox One, but they did a Switch version, which is still it's beyond that. So to bring it kind of full circle to, I guess, what we started the show off with, what we're playing at the moment. When I saw these circulating on Twitter, there was a part of me which thought the bad screenshots look like Starfield images. I'm not going to lie, some of the faces, and especially the dead eyes, reminded me of a lot of NPCs I've came across in Starfield.
Yeah,
so,
not the talkable NPCs, like the one line of NPCs.
The best one I've seen is, you know, the meme of Joy from Friends, where he's like,
shocked,
that's the best one I've seen. It absolutely nails it.
Johnny Cage without glasses is definitely someone I've spoke to on Neon City in Starfield. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it just shows you the variance of video. You can get a AAA game running on an iPhone. Aurora. Yeah, and then the same, a dedicated handheld console cannot better this, but it's apparently it's got Ed Boons came out and said they're going to do improvements, which I'd bloody hope so for that price point, and any poor sod who's bought it, but
what's the level of improvement here? Because it is that far behind. It is actually that bad. I mean, if the game plays plays well, you can still have a lot of fun with it, even if the graphics are terrible. I do truly believe that graphics aren't the end of the world, but what's the ceiling here in terms of improving this? Because it doesn't feel like very high.
No. I'd agree.
Bring the price down. That's the best they could do.
Yeah, I think cut the price and then just cut the price, cut the losses, and just forget it ever happened.
Move on.
Almost.
Yeah.
So very bad reception for Nintendo Switch players on there. Again, we need a Switch 2. That's just the end of the conversation on that. That's it, really.
Yeah.
Final story. There's lots of things we haven't covered this week for time reasons, which we'll pick up in terms of next week's around game drops and announcements from Tokyo Game Show. But I want to end on a nice positive. I distinctly remember us talking about the state of Cyberpunk 2077 the last time kind of this came into like the zeitgeist and how bad that was. The expansion Phantom Liberty, which is due out, it will be out by the time this goes. Actually,
2 days.
Yeah, 2 days. So it will be. But within 24 hours you'll be able to play this, and the latest DLC is dropping to really, really good initial reviews. So we're averaging 88 on Metacritic. I've seen people who have early access or content streamers, they're saying it fundamentally changes how the game plays. It's almost a disservice to call this a DLC. It's almost kind of, DLC plus game polish in a way. Everyone's kind of really favourable on the new police system. The Idris Elba apparently kills it in his role in the game as well, and I think it's just
no one was surprised by that at all.
Yeah, but it's just really, really nice to see that. Like Project CD Red had a great reputation before Cyberpunk came out. It got kind of very, very tarnished, but they've stuck with it, and despite the fact this is paid DLC, so there's that argument. I feel like it's just a very nice positive U-turn which the Cyberpunk universe has taken, because the IP is fantastic and has legs for decades to come, I think.
There is a great game in there. I stand by what I've said all along. I think the game came out about 1 year to 18 months too early. It wasn't ready. It still needed a little bit more time in the oven, and if it came out a year later, I think the initial reception would have been completely different.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely planning on playing this game. What about you two?
Richie finished it, but he's not a DLC guy.
And I also don't own the game anymore.
That too. I don't own the game anymore, but I am holding out for a physical PS5 release, because it's annoying that if you want it on PS5, you have to buy the PS4 version and get a free digital upgrade. But I don't want a blue box sat on my shelf alongside all my white PS5 boxes. So this DLC is something that, like, again, a game-breaking bug locked me out of finishing how far I was through the story, so I just kind of gave up on it. But as you said, Rob, the world itself is quite alluring, and the fact that they fixed it in this 2.0 update with like everything basically refined from the ground up, is I think this is finally the end of kind of Cyberpunk's redemption arc. And if they did like a Game of the Year that maybe included the DLC come December, I could be tempted to just jump back in. But yeah, I've got my eyes on it, but there's just so much to play this year. It's like, it's mad to think they're going to drop a fantastic DLC in amongst everything else.
That'd be a smart move. We're going to do a Game of the Year edition for the PS5 and Xbox Series
and the Switch
versions. It's got.
Could you imagine how bad this game would have ran on the Switch?
I mean, it ran very well on the cloud. So on Google Stadia. Google Stadia at launch was the best place to play it, unless you got an absolute balling top-end gaming PC. But that's always a top-end gaming PC is always going to be the best place to play it, because you literally have the best hardware, as long as optimization stuff. But yeah, I think a Game of the Year edition with the DLC in, for to just as a last hurrah for the game.
Yeah, I think it's great. That's all we have time for this week. Chris, would you like to cue up the outro with a nice little nugget of gaming history?
Cue up the outro, as in set you up for it, or just go into it?
Oh no, I thought this was your thing that you were going to do. I thought this was like your little own thing.
No, it's just part of the show every week. So yeah, we round up. So we're recording on the 24th of September, and we like to end every show by looking back at this day in video games history. I guess I will take this on as my thing, Rob.
I feel like this is your thing,
take it as my thing. Looking back at this day in video game history, we have Eco on the PlayStation 2 22 years ago. Remember, Eco then went on to make some, or the Eco team, I should say, went on to make some fantastic games eventually. Silent Hill 2 released 22 years ago also. We had Spyro 2 also drop. Jackass the Game came out too.
I remember this game.
Jackass the Game. And Pro Evolution Soccer 2014, just to throw that in the mix. But quite a quiet day overall. I guess, Richie, one for you, Baldur's Gate 2.
Yeah, I was going to say that we're not going to get through this list without me mentioning Baldur's Gate 2 Shadows. Amazing game. It took 23 years between Baldur's Gate 2 and Baldur's Gate 3. Yeah,
but and then a couple of other ones in the Contra Rogue Core. But other than that, not a massively big one. Bratz the Movie video game came out for the Game Boy Advance and the Wii.
One for Rob
there, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is September 24th in video game.
I mean, we're not going to top Bratz on that list. Absolutely zero chance. So what we'll do, we'll close out there. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you for your really encouraging words of feedback. The last time I hosted this show, it's very much appreciated. If you want to join those types of conversations to give me more praise or chastise me at all, the Discord is the place to be. If you've got to the end of this show and you're not subscribed and you're not signed up to notifications, please do so. Thank you for your continued support, and we will speak to you next week. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.